Good evening, Mr. Bond fans. I've been expecting you. So, as you may have seen advertised for this, but just in case you've just stumbled on, I saw No Time to Die at the cinema a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, and I then decided that I was going to do a review, having seen it, because obviously I have to look at my list of Bond films and which I prefer least and which I prefer most, and that needs to be amended. And it's also good because the last time I did such a list was about a year ago or over a year ago. So, and even in that relatively short space of time, some of your views might change slightly. And I found out they have slightly. And I do warn you that you might not be too happy pretty early on with some of what I say. So, do get, bear with me. I'm just doing some small house tidying. Yes. So we'll be getting started in a moment. I'm just making sure all of this gets seen, and we'll make a start. I am including the two hybrid Bond films, the two unofficial. Casino Royale, the 1967 version, and Never Say Never Again. And we'll take it from there. If at any point you have any questions, any queries, any comments, don't hesitate to leave them in the comment section, and I will be happy to include them in the comments. So, happy to include them in what I'm saying here right now. So, having a look at the list that I will have in front of me, and I will give it'll be about half an hour this, and I'll give about 30-second explanation or so, and see how we go from there. At number 27, there's no way around this, no way around this at all. Bottom of the list is the 1967 version of Casino Royale. It cannot be defended. It's a lovable mess. It's got Burt Bacharach doing the soundtrack, brilliant. Some fine actors in it. I actually think some of the scenes with Peter Sellers are the best bits, and Peter Sellers was the one who sabotaged the film. Although David Niven does a good job as well. Orson Welles would have made an intriguing Bond villain in the Eon series, but it's a mess. The plot is a mess. It's convoluted. Even as a satire on Bond, it fails slightly. It got too ambitious, and I think the ambition killed it. I think Austin Powers films were closest to what perhaps they were aiming to achieve. So that's at number 27. Number 26. You are going to so hate me. You are going to so hate me of what's on number 26, to the point where I'm a tiny bit scared of what you'll be thinking. And it is Goldfinger. Strap me to a chair and fire a laser at me. Not literally. Why is this at number 26? And I feel bad putting it at number 26. I honestly do. But I go for each Bond how I do this, and I have to explain how I do this to explain what's at number 26. I think through the Bonds in chronological order and think, is it better than worse than, better than worse than, better than worse than, and it all adds up. It might be that they did something, I think, the quiz thing where you had to find out your order of preference, and I suppose I ought to revisit that. Maybe Goldfinger be slightly higher. I like the stereotypical scenes like Bond talking for his life on the table. I like the golf scene between Bond and Goldfinger. I like the concept of putting a dirty atomic bomb in Fort Knox, and so as to eradicate, so that puts up the supply of gold. That's a brilliant villainous scheme. I think what gets me is people say, "Oh, this is how the Bond films really began in earnest," but it's not. It's it's not as good as some of the later Bond films with the Bond tropes. You can see the limitations, the severe limitations. It feels like everything was filmed in Britain, which it wasn't. I mean, the Swiss scenes were filmed in Switzerland. It feels like it's had less money on it than from Russia with Love. You would expect it to have less money than Thunderball, but it has less money than it feels like it has less money than from Russia with Love. It just feels. Ugh. So it's nothing like major. But that's just basically it. And I'm probably explaining why more than anything else than any other Bond film. But I feel I have to justify why it's so down the list. So number 25, Doctor No. Yeah, it was always going to be very down the list, simply because it was being the first Bond film. Everything was being tried out for the first time. On its own, it's a very good film. Or they're a lot better films, but it stands well on its own. But it is where its surface is. It's not your typical Bond film, but that's not the fault of the film. It's the fact that it was the first Bond film. I think though that the Doctor No's lair at Crab Key is one of the best Ken Adam designs. It's one of my favourite villain layers. I do like the detective story aspect of it. But it does suffer, and I do think, yeah. Number 24. You're not just going to strap me to a table and fire a laser at me. You're going to leave me on a farm full of crocodiles, aren't you, for this? Live and Let Die. Sorry, guys. Live and Let Die is at number 24 on my list of favourite Bond films. I know some of you think it's higher. Why is it at number 24? I don't like the voodoo element, and I don't like the way it plays to it with Solitaire and ESP. That is a big rule in my because it's central to the voodoo is central to the plot, and it doesn't properly explain in a way of how Solitaire. It gives the impression that the voodoo world is real in the way that I think horror film. Yeah, I'd understand, but this is not a horror film. This is Bond, or even an esoteric film of some kind. Yeah, this is Bond, and it's that does play its part. There's a lot I like about it. I love the soundtrack by George Martin. I love the crocodile farm scene. That is a brilliant. How the heck did Bond get out of this? And he does it so simply, just go across the backs of the crocodiles. So, and I love the boat chase scene, Louisiana boat chase scene. I think David Hedson's just about not quite, but one of the top 3 Felix Leiters. I'd have to do a list of Felix Leiters one day. So yeah, there are some things. I'll mention something I like about each of the Bond films because I think that's important. If I'm dishing out on so many others. So number 23, The World Is Not Enough. So it just feels like the Electric King aspect and the oil and everything, yeah, brilliant. I like it. Very Fleming-esque. That's also good. But it kind of feels like it's the man with the golden gun to, if you look at it in the stereotypical fan sense, the man with the golden gun to Tomorrow Never Dies, Live and Let Die, and Die Another Day, Spy Love Me. I mean, I'm not rating. The World's Not Enough just feels out of place. I don't know if it's the lack of enemy base and all the other tropes compared to the other 3 Bond films. I don't know what it is. I don't quite put my finger on it, but it just doesn't fit with me. And I do like the ski chase scene as well, but as I said, there's things in there I really like about it, but it just something doesn't gel, and I think it doesn't have enough Bond tropes, whereas the other three Pierce Brosnan films did. Number 22, low on pretty much everyone's list, I think. Quantum of Solace, or nearly none. I think part of the reason Quantum of Solace is bad is because it's the film after Casino Royale. Daniel Craig's second Bond film, and nearly every actor's second Bond film suffers in comparison to their first, at least when it first comes out. Connery got away with it from Russia with Love, but Roger Moore felt hampered with them, was seen by fans as the man with the golden gun. Initially, Dalton with License to Kill, and yeah, second Bond films do tend to sometimes go in comparison to that. But Mark Foster is pretentious with his directing. I didn't fully realise how pretentious he was till I saw Kelvin Dyson's review. But there is an element of real pretension in it, and some of the script is badly. Some very good ideas there. I love the power politics and the way Quantum, as a front for Spectre, as we later find, has its claws in. But the Quantum Spectre thing should have been better done, but that's something for later on in my review. Dominic Green's a good Bond villain. I have no problem with Dominic Green. But the bit grim how he was bumped off. But yeah, that's basically it. Number 22. Is it 23? No, number 21. Sorry, just said number 22. Number 21. The Man with the Golden Gun. I'm starting to be relatively okay with it. This is Roger Moore's second Bond film. Christopher Lee as Scaramanga is definitely in the top 5 Bond villains, let alone top 10. I like Scaramanga's HQ. What don't I like about it? Well, I don't like the misogyny, which I know it's Bond, but some films it's a lot worse than others. And obviously Bond and the Andrea Anders incident in Hong Kong is a bit, I find that difficult. I find there's a sense of it undervalue in this film. I mean, if you're doing a fight scene, you can see the camera through the mirror. It is pretty bad. And I think also it suffers because the Bond film after that's The Spy Who Loved Me. And there was 2.5 years between those two films. But my goodness, it feels like nearly a whole decade. You can see, I don't know if it's just me, but you can see, it feels like in the classic Bond era, if you go from Dr. No to License to Kill even, you've got two halves. First, 2 eras. The first era is Dr. No to The Man with the Golden Gun. Second era is Spy Who Loved Me to License to Kill. And you can feel that gap. You can see that gap. A whole difference. Whether it's because a whole load of production team changed and Harry Saltzman's no longer in, but it does. And The Man with the Golden Gun suffers very much in comparison to The Spy Who Loved Me. Very much. But and you can also sense the tiredness in the franchise at that point. But I think Christopher Lee was the saving grace of that in some ways. Number 20, License to Kill. I discussed this with Malcolm Mann in one of my reviews. I don't really have a problem per se with License to Kill. It's almost like I don't have a problem per se with Dr. No. It's what it is and what it isn't. And License to Kill, my problem with it doesn't feel like a Bond film. Doesn't feel particularly I mean, it has some of the Bond tropes, like the HQ blowing up and stuff. I think if Timothy Dalton did a few more, I would perhaps be a bit more charitable about License to Kill. I was certainly a bit more charitable about it at the time than I am now when it came out, but it just feels like an odd one out. That said, Robert Davi as Fan Sanchez is one of the best Bond villains, definitely in my top 10. And again, I don't have much of a problem with the film per se. And there's also something fairly Fleming-esque about it. And I like it when they go a bit towards Fleming, but at the same time, they keep to the standard Bond film tropes. And that's a very hard balancing act. License to Kill doesn't do it that well, but it does well on the Fleming aspect, perhaps. So, yes, that's at number 20. Going on then to number 19, and yes, this is Diamonds Are Forever. I think a lot of Bond fans both like and dislike Diamonds Are Forever. They hold it in some affection and also some disdain. I don't think it's aged well in a number of respects. That said, some of Tom Mankiewicz's humour is good, and I like humour in Bond films. I think Mr. Winter and Mr. Kidd are two of the most unnerving Bond henchmen. There's several unnerving Bond, but they are high up in the Bond hint because I do like to be scared of villains. It doesn't feel like a Sean Connery Bond film. It feels like Sean Connery walking in on a Roger Moore Bond film. This is, if in an alternative universe, this is Roger Moore's first Bond film, I wouldn't have been, wouldn't be surprised. But it's, and I don't think Tom Mankiewicz writes women very well. In the 3 Bond films he wrote for, they are pretty much helpless. I mean, I know they're gutsy. They show gutsiness to some degree. But there is this, and Jill St. John's Tiffany Case is the best of all of them. But it just doesn't, and Charles Gray is a good actor. He does a good Bond villain. But I don't think he's a good Ernst Stavro. He's not how I see Ernst Stavro Blofeld. I could see, even with Telly Savalas on Her Majesty's Secret Service, I could see it being the same character in From Russia with Love, Thunderball, You Have Twice on The Majesty's Secret. Not Diamonds Are Forever. And I've been happy to see Charles Gray cast as a Bond villain in anything, as any character, but Blofeld. So, yes, that's number 19. Number 18, which probably going to take a bit longer of this, but I feel I have to justify myself, which I think a lot of people do when they publicly do reviews Bond films in order of preference. But number 18 will not surprise you probably. It's Spectre. I have some frustrations with Spectre. I think Spectre could have been one of the best Bond films. Here it is after 4 decades back in, if you disclude Fiore's Only and Never Say Never Again. In Fiore's Only, it's just Blofeld reduced to having a henchman on the helicopter. But enough that in Spectre, there's so much could have been done. And there's some brilliant scenes. I think up to a certain point, the scenes with Blofeld's hosting a Spectre meeting in Rome was very chilling. And Spectre is an organisation the viewer should be scared of. I think it achieves that slightly, but not in the way it was in From Russia with Love and Thunderball. And they should have notched that up to 11. And the whole adoptive brother thing, really, it had some good ideas and then it botched it up with others. I did like the thing in the chasing route where he's talking Moneypenny and it turns out Moneypenny's got likely as a boyfriend. And I've been in Rome. I love Rome. So to see that chase scene was quite something. So there were things I do. And Rafe Fiennes is hitting the stride as M. So, yeah, it's good. And in which case we now go to number 17, which is, believe it or not, the hybrid Bond film of the 1983, Never Say Never Again. I don't hate Never Say Never Again. I don't have the visceral dislike some Bond fans do. I can happily watch it on a Sunday afternoon. But I think part of what makes it suffer is it's trying to be all things. It's trying to be different from the Bond norm, but it's trying to keep to that. It doesn't quite know what it wants to be. So the soundtrack with Michael Legrand, no, that doesn't fit. Edward Fox's M, no. But on the other hand, Sean Connery gives a good if you discount them from Russia with Love video game, gives a good final performance, coming back to do a final bow as Bond. They criminally underused Max von Sydow as Blofeld. But he was too amiable at Blofeld. The best Blofeld's the one when you didn't see him, or you didn't see him for much of it, like Donald Pleasance in You Only Live Twice. Blofeld's meant to be Moriarty to Bond's Holmes. He's got to be, you've got to be a bit scared of Blofeld. Yeah. So that's at number 17. Number 16, which is along here, is Thunderball. And yeah, again, I don't hate it. It's very much a Marmite Bond film, and it's like the third Bond film with some actors like Connery, Goldfinger, Morse, Spy Who Loved Me, Craig with Skyfall. You have the fourth Bond film, which is the Marmite Bond film that people either like or don't like. With Roger Moore, it's Moonraker. With Daniel Craig, it's Spectre. And with Sean Connery, it's Thunderball. And and Pierce Brosnan tomorrow, Die Another Day. So yeah, it's good, but it does have its moments. I think too many underwater scenes
have its moments.
Hang on, I do apologise. Do apologise for that. I was trying to check something at the same time, which was very bad of me. Too many underwater scenes. Plot wasn't properly ironed out in some parts, but the ideas were good. The ideas were very good. It does. Luciana Paluzzi as Fiona Volpe is one of the best Bond. She literally steals the film. I don't think Adolfo Celli is that bad as Largo. There's an element of cruelty and unnervingness about him that I think sticks out. But it's one of those things. I think it lacks an oomph. Which and the shrubland scene, how the scenes with Patricia Fearing are awful, and that's also one of the things I don't like about Goldfinger, of how Bond turns pussy galore. It's just horrible. It's horrible. I don't like it. Some will argue it's for the time, but it's Bond at his most nasty with women, and I don't like it. Well, one of the things where he's at his most nasty, but it's just fully hits home what a misogynist he can be. Number 15, Die Another Day. Usual stuff, CGI bits. Not too keen on the car, but I do love the car fight chase thing with Zhao, and both cars being, having their accessories. I like that. I like the Bond going rogue after North Korea. I love the scene where he goes to that hotel in Hong Kong looking like a tramp, and all those disgusted looks. It's like the perfect antidote to all the other stuff about Bond. I love the sword fight scene in Blades, very Fleming-esque. Things I do very much like about it. So I've actually, Blades was filmed at something that's filmed at the Reform Club, and I was a +1. My wife was at a event there, and yes, it's I looked and said, this looks all familiar, and yes, it's quite nice to recognize that. So that goes to our next Bond film, which is at number 14, which I believe is Octopussy. Don't hate it, don't particularly rate it. It's either one or the other with me. There are things I do. I mean, this is the halfway point now. From now on, the chance I pretty much really like them. But it's got. I like the east-west tension. It perfectly merges the flippancy of Roger Moore with the hard-edged stuff that they were trying to bring in from time to time in his era. It's the film where it's one of the perhaps 2 or 3 films they balance that perfectly. Maud Adams is one of the best Bond girls as Octopussy. Robert Brown making a good start as M. And Stephen Berkoffer's Gemma Orloff is, yes, that's one of the best most well-written characters in the series and one of the best OTT, but it has to be in this case performances. So that goes down to number 13, which is, if you just bear with me, You Only Live Twice. Now, when I last did this list, this was pretty much in the top 10. So I was surprised slightly by myself seeing it go down to 13. I think my recent concerns over Roald Dahl played part of that. And also be fully reminded of Bond being made to look like a Chinese fisherman. So those things have put it further down on the list. But the Hollowed Out Volcano, best Bond villain layer ever. Donald Pleasance gives one of the top performances as Blofeld. Possibly the best one where you see his face. Very good use of location in Japan. Terrific chance to see a lot of top-rated Japanese actors. And yes, Connery doesn't give his best performance as Bond in that, but I think he was just tired and fed up, and it was at the time he felt this was his last one. So yeah, but yeah, it's got stuff going for it, but it's for reasons I've given, it's gone further down the list now. So that goes down to number 12. Again, was in the top 10 and gone down the list. Few Eyes Only. I am uncomfortable. Let's see what I don't like. I am uncomfortable with the BB doll aspect, even though it's played for laughs and even though they make a point of Bond not taking advantage of her. But he does sort of take advantage of her at the ice rink in pretending to flirt with her in order to get information. I find that creepy. I find it also creepy the bit where BB's new sponsor is Columbo and the look on Columbo's face. I don't like it. The pre-title sequence is one of the best in the whole series, where Bond visits the grave of his wife, and also it has his fight. Seeing Roger Moore's Bond facing Blofeld is good, but just 5 minutes. I mean, that's lawsuits for you, really. They couldn't use Blofeld or Spectre, thanks to Kevin McClory. So there's that. But overall, what rates it is Bond's more of a grounded Bond after Moonraker. Is pretty much an espionage film in the 80s and quite Fleming-esque in a number of ways. Julian Glover does fairly well as Aris Christatos. And yes, and Carl Bouquet gives a good performance as Melina Havelock. And yeah, so that's number 12. And number 11, and we're heading towards the top 10 quite quickly, aren't we? Is Tomorrow Never Dies. Pierce Brosnan's second Bond film. I think this does You know, it's one of his finest moments as Bond, that film. A worthy successor to GoldenEye, but not as good as GoldenEye. I think Jonathan Pryce's Elliot Carver is excellent as a Bond villain, and having the Bond villain as a media mogul kind of puts the cat among the pigeons. I love the play of China and UK being allies but suspicious of each other, but the importance of working together against this person, against the villain. I do like a number of aspects. The motorcycle chase scene it's meant to be in Vietnam, and yeah, so there are things I pretty much like about it. So this takes us down to the top 10. So let's have a quick go through on that. And number 10 is Skyfall. This is pretty much it. Daniel Craig's Goldfinger, or The Spy Who Loved Me. His third Bond film. Was disappointed at the time when I saw it at cinema. I'm still disappointed. No gun barrel before the pre-title sequence. I love how they bring in Q, and I love how they bring in Moneypenny, and I think Raul Silva is one of the most unnerving and best Bond villains. I like the fact it's a tad unusual. M is pretty much at the centre of the plot. Albert Finney, in what turned out to be his last film, gives an excellent performance as for gamekeeper at Skyfall, Bond's old place. I love the fact that they brought back the Aston Martin DB5 again. There's a lot to like about it. The fight scene in the house Skyfall does feel a bit Home Alone at times, but yes, and yes, it's been a good film. I've just got a comment from Matthew Allen Newland before I continue. Listening while setting up my online classes for next week, and most enjoyable listener. I'm not familiar with any Bond films after GoldenEye. Well, as long as I haven't disappointed you and have yet to mention GoldenEye because it's so high up on my list. So spoiler alert there. And thank you very much, Matthew. That's really appreciated. So, coming down to number 9 on our list, which is, and if you just bear with me because I just need to double check, that is A View to a Kill. And some of these are, some people think View to a Kill is perhaps not the best Bond film. It isn't one of the best Bond films. Roger Moore, it does feel like Roger Moore's last Bond film. I remember when it came out, and it just felt incredible that Roger Moore was still playing Bond, because Roger Moore was playing Bond before I was born, and I was very much the most recent ones I'd seen were because I was watching them on television, and too young really to go and see it cinema. Were The Spy Loved Me and Moonraker, but The View to a Kill is if you discount Never Say Never Again, which in my young state thought they were re-releasing a Sean Connery one from the 60s. A View to a Kill is the earliest Bond film I remember coming out at cinema. And so, yeah, I was a bit surprised Roger Moore back at, it did feel like a return of Roger Moore as Bond, even though he hadn't been absent. Seeing it, Christopher Walken as Max Zorin is one of the best Bond villains. He scares me and unnerves me slightly, even now. It's the sheer unpredictable psychopathic nastiness. I mean, he has someone literally chopped up in a tunnel. What's it? The bit where they stand and watch after pushing a car into the lake with an unconscious Bond is unnerving, because it does sort of slightly hamper Bond's escape attempt, which he succeeds. There's obviously, but there is something about that film where Grace Jones as Mayday is very good. Tanya Roberts isn't so good at Stacey Sutton, but she gives it a good go. But in some ways it's well written. Maybe it would have been a bit more spiky and a bit more popular if this was Timothy Dalton's first Bond film. But it does have its merits, and I think Christopher Walken and Grace Jones are saving grace to it a great deal. No pun intended. And at number 8, we have Moonraker. Some would want this further down the list, some would want it higher. Moonraker was one of the very first Bond films I saw. The only reason it's as low as number 8 is obviously I can't ignore the fact it is the most far-fetched Bond film in so many ways, where the villain's HQ is in outer space. And I think the most far-fetched moment's the space battle between Drax's astronauts and sort of US Marines and NASA astronauts. Good use of location filming, went on Earth. Hugo Drax, one of the best Bond villains. I also love the fact that in both the novel Moonraker and in the film, M meets Drax. And you can also set in the novel, M doesn't trust Drax, and you can see the look of Bernard Lee's M when he meets Drax. If you look at him, he's that, I don't know how you did this, but I know you're behind it and I don't trust you look. And I think that acts very well when you see M tacitly support Bond in continuing to his mission to go after Drax. And it was Bernard Lee's last film as M as well, and I think he leaves on a high. Although obviously it's tragic that he died when he did and he didn't get to do a few more. So, and Drax, there is a bit wildly coyote and obviously not brilliant, but you know, Drax is Drax, and not Drax. I mean, Jaws. Jaws is Jaws. I'm getting tired. Jaws is Jaws, and he's, you know, fairly good henchman, but he's far better in The Spy Who Loved Me. And this goes to number 7. No Time to Die. I've put it in the top 10. I rate it. I don't want to give too much away because I don't want to give spoilers. So I'm going to try and be as spoiler free as I can. So I'm not going to mention. I'm going to tell you what I knew before I saw the film, if possible. But try and give a hint as to why I think this one. I think this one resolves a lot of things in the Craig era. It's a Bond film like no other. And I would go as far as that in terms of close to spoilers. It's got good use of location, which you can get from trailers. It's also got an emotional depth. And Rami Malek as Safin is one of the most unnerving Bond villains there is. And yeah. And I think they use the Bond women in that are used very, very well and are very well written. And Phoebe Waller-Bridge's contribution to the scripts, she who wrote Fleabag, Killing Eve, etc. Yeah, you can see her influence on the pages. So that's number 7, No Time to Die, which goes to number 6, the last of the Connery Bond films on the list, which is From Russia with Love. As I've got older, I've learned to appreciate From Russia with Love a lot more. It's more of a detective spy thriller than a Bond film per se, but it does work. It's serious and depth, and it's the first time you see Blofeld and the use of Spectre and the use of the Bond villains. Nothing's underused. Red Grant, one of the most unnerving henchmen. Rosa Klebb, sinister and brutal to an amazing degree, so unlike the actress who played her, Lotte Lenya. Pedro Mendez's last film, he tragically died before filming was completed, but after he'd done all the scenes that he was supposed to do, as Karen Bay gives a good farewell performance. And all well written, all good. Second Bond film better than the first. Hits the ground running, really, and helps set the pace for future Bond films. So that goes down to number 5, which is, I believe, let's double check this because The Living Daylights. I don't really need a list now. The battery on the phone's gone. So part of this is nostalgia. The excitement, I remember when it came out, Timothy Dalton's the new James Bond, which had not is the first I'd experienced a new James Bond as such. And as someone who is experienced of Connery and Moore, and yet I had already seen On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but in many respects, a brand new Bond was still, quite strange, really. I think it's well written. It's pretty much Ian Fleming from the 80s, and it's an expansion of short story by Ian Fleming. And in many ways, it's whilst having to bring it to the 1980s, it is a faithful adaptation of the Fleming short story. I know Cara Mallovi can be a bit of a bimbo and how she's written, but I think Mariam Darbo brings so much justice and so much humanity to that role. You can't help but love the character. Timothy Dalton, I think, shows it's a bit uneven in how he plays Bond, but that's the script's fault. That's not him, and he's finding his way in his first Bond film. But I think there would have been, had Dalton done more, there would have been his Bond would have been a combination of how we see him in The Living Daylights and in License to Kill. But it's all good. My one complaint, I think, Joe Don Baker as Brad Whitaker is perhaps not ideal. Larry Hagman as Brad Whitaker would have been interesting. And the car. And John Barry, the last time John Barry did a score for the Bond films, excellent stuff. So that goes to number 4, which is Casino Royale, the 2006 version. I don't think I've ever left a Bond film at the cinema believing I'd seen a classic, and I've hardly deviated from my view. I mean, I don't think any of the others I left feeling I'd seen. I thought I'd seen a very good Bond film, but I didn't think I'd left see the classic. And I did Casino Royale. It was perhaps the best Bond film I've seen at the cinema, with the exception of GoldenEye, and I think that's no coincidence. Both were directed by Martin Campbell. Well written, an echo from Russia with Love and the general 60s Bond films, but without some of the more salubrious aspects. Daniel Craig nails the part of Bond first time round, but that's partly because this is a total reboot of the series, so you see Bond start off all over again. So, you're growing with Bond, but you believe him as Bond from the word go. So he did very well in that. I think Mads Mikkelsen is Le Chiffre, one of the best villains. Ava Green does a brilliant performance as Vesper Lind. I don't think anyone else could have done it quite so well. It's pretty much a Bond film, about Bond finding his feet, and it does well. And it's as far as you can by putting it in the world of 2006 rather than in the world of 1953, when the book came out. It is pretty much faithful to the book, although they give it a bit of a backstory. But yes, definitely a classic. I still go by that. Another classic, but wasn't seen as such at the time, but is very much now, is at number 3, which is On Her Majesty's Secret Service. There's a bit of about George Lazenby. His performance can be uneven, but I think he gives a credible performance overall as Bond. I think had he continued, he could have, with proper direction, he could have been really, really good. And you can see when you look at where Lazenby totally shines as Bond, if you saw consistency there, they played to his strengths. We could have seen a Bond quite similar to Roger Moore's, perhaps, but definitely that would have been, that's an era we'll never have. But yes, Telly Savalas said it does have menace as Blofeld, not just the physical menace, but the emotional menace. I do pretty much like him in that. I love the concept of Bond falling in love and getting married. Diana Rigg does that so well. It helps sell that so well as Tracy. And I love that scene, not just the ski chase scene, but when he's hiding for his life in that, watching the ice skaters, and you see the skate stop and their eyes meet. And I always used to wonder why I adored that scene in particular. And someone told me years later, it's when Bond realizes he's fallen in love. And I love the ski chase scenes, really do. The music as well by John Barry, one of his best scores. So yeah, and I love the occasional references to previous Bond films. Number two, GoldenEye. Um, GoldenEye is came out after an absence of 6 years, so it had to do well. And I think, like the film I'm going to mention at number one, I think it was the gap and the pressure and the absence, and everything was riding on this. And it was also a new James Bond with Pierce Brosnan. There was a pressure. It had to do well, and it did. It's well written. All the Bond tropes are there that work. The main villain characters, they're all well written, from the awful Xenia on the top, who always did enjoy a good squeeze, to the slimy General Oromov, but not too slimy, and the slightly camp and doesn't really have a sense of the real world, Boris Grishenko. But again, that's not overplayed either, or just right. And I think Natalia Simonova, played by Isabella Scorpia, is one of the best Bond girls. It works. It fires on all cylinders. It's wonderful, and they also address Bond's deficiencies. And in some ways, that he does what he does to keep himself alive, emotionally. And I think they touch on Bond's failings slightly as well. It has its Fleming moments, and I think all of it works. And this is where it does work, where you get the best of Fleming Bond and the best of the cinematic Bond, and they merge together well. And that's why I think GoldenEye works. Number one, The Spy Who Loved Me. I think again it's nostalgia of sorts. It was just about the first Bond film I remember seeing, but it has all the Bond tropes, the dire threats to the end of world civilization, the huge HQs. I mean, the tanker scene was that they built the 007 stage for that, biggest studio in the world at the time. Kurt Jurgens as Carl Stromberg isn't bad, but he's not one of the most chilling Bond films. But Richard Keel gives a better performance as Jaws in this one. Barbara Bach does, she sells, but Anya Massiva, but she could have, yeah. But Roger Moore gives, I think, his best performance as Bond. He's got the steeliness, but also the ready raised eyebrow and smirk, all balanced down to a T. And love the locations, love the chase with the Lotus. And the music, Marvin Hamlish's score, and the use of the one part of the score which goes throughout the film, Bond 77. Brilliant. So yes, it is my favorite Bond. It was the last time I did this list, and it is still The Spy Who Loved Me is my favorite Bond film, which was a pleasant surprise, but I think I always knew. So there's my list of my top 27, order of preference, order what I like, all the Bond films. Thank you for being with me for nearly 50 minutes. I thought this would be half an hour, but I felt I had to explain some of them. And yes, if you haven't seen No Time to Die, do go and see it. I think you'll get a lot out of it, especially if, even if you're not a Bond fan, especially if you're not a Bond fan. So yeah, and have a good evening and a good rest of the week. God bless you, and enjoy your evening. Cheers. Bye.